Welcome back to Betrayal Chronicles. Today, I want to share a story about a man who gave everything: his love, his loyalty, and his labor, only to be told he never truly belonged. This is the story of Jack Turner, a man who built his life like he built his homes, with precision, patience, and purpose, until one sentence shattered it all. It started with 7 words at a dinner table. "Don't talk to my sons like that. You're not their father." The sound of it wasn't loud, but it hit like a slap. Jack froze mid-bite, the warmth of his home suddenly turning cold. His wife, Lena, stared across the table, her green eyes sharp as glass. The 2 boys, Luke and Thank You, looked from their mother to Jack, sensing the storm they had just unleashed. For 2 years, Jack had treated them like his own flesh and blood. He had picked them up from school, packed their lunches, fixed their bikes, taught them how to measure twice and cut once. He had stepped into a broken family and built a roof strong enough for all of them. And now that roof was cracking right above his head. Lena's tone was clipped, defensive, the kind that made every word sting more. "You're not their father, Jack. Stop acting like you are." Jack didn't respond. He just stared at the woman he once believed was his second chance at life. He'd met her in a small roadside diner 3 years ago, a single mother working double shifts. 2 boys asleep in the corner booth while she refilled coffee cups with trembling hands. Back then, she'd seemed grateful, sweet, fragile. Even, he'd offered help a few repairs on her old house. A little financial breathing room. She'd offered companionship, laughter, a sense of family he hadn't felt since the day he buried his first wife. Marianne. The name still felt sacred in his mind. They had built their dream home together, every beam, every brick, touched by both their hands. And then, one rainy night, a drunk driver erased that dream in a blink. For years afterward, Jack lived alone in silence, surrounded by the echo of her voice and the smell of sawdust. Then came Lena and her boys. She needed saving, and he needed purpose. Together, they had built something that looked like love, but that night, it all came undone. The lasagna Lena had cooked sat cooling between them. The boys poked at it with their forks, pretending not to listen, their faces half lit by the soft glow of the kitchen lights. Jack finally spoke, calm, steady, like a man used to holding command. "I wasn't trying to discipline them, Lena. I was trying to teach them something." Lena laughed, sharp and bitter. "Teach them? You think you can replace their father with your little lectures about responsibility?" She leaned back, arms crossed. "If you want to play dad so bad, go get your own kids." The words twisted something deep inside him. Not his heart, something lower, heavier, like a wooden beam snapping under too much weight. For a moment, Jack said nothing. He just looked at the family he'd built, or thought he had. The house around him was warm, bright, filled with everything money could buy. But in that silence, he realized it had no foundation. It wasn't a home. It was a stage, and he was just a prop. He rose slowly, chair scraping against the hardwood he'd polished himself. His voice, when it came, was quiet but final. "You're right," he said. "I'm not their father." Then he turned and walked out of the room. As the door closed behind him, Lena smirked, thinking she'd won. But what she didn't see, what no one saw, was the look in Jack's eyes as he stood in the hallway. Calm, collected, already making plans, because a builder knows one truth better than anyone. When the foundation's rotten, you don't fix it, you tear it down and start again. Before that night, before Lena's words tore through him, there was another life, one that began with love and ended in the kind of silence that only grief can build. Jack Turner had once been a man who believed in permanence. He and his first wife, Marianne, had spent years sketching dreams on napkins, the kind of dreams young couples think will last forever. A porch that faced the sunrise, a kitchen filled with laughter, a home built not by contractors, but by Jack's own hands. He'd poured concrete, sanded beams, carved window frames until his knuckles bled. Every nail he drove in carried the sound of her humming in the background, some old country tune she never quite finished. That house wasn't just wood and stone, it was love in its truest form. A structure that stood as proof that something good could last, until the night it didn't. It was a rainy Friday in November. Marianne was driving home from her sister's when a drunk driver crossed the median. Jack remembered the call, the sterile voice on the other end. The way the world went completely still, no noise. No air. Just the echo of his own heartbeat in the dark. He buried her with his hands shaking so hard he could barely hold the shovel. And afterward, he couldn't bring himself to leave that house. He lived there like a ghost. Surrounded by her touch, the coffee cup still on the counter. The flannel shirt still hanging by the door. Every creak of the floorboard felt like her footsteps returning. Years passed. The wood aged. The garden wilted. And the laughter that once filled the rooms faded into dust. Jack stopped building. He stopped talking. He worked when he could. Drank when he couldn't. He had everything a man could want except a reason to wake up. Until one afternoon, he stopped at a roadside cafe outside Joliet. That's where he met Lena. She was behind the counter. Hair tied back. Exhaustion heavy under her eyes, but a kind of fire still burning there. The kind that refuses to die. Even when life keeps kicking it down. Her sons, Luke and Thank You, sat in a booth. Bent over homework. Luke's voice was soft but patient, guiding his little brother through fractions. Jack watched them for a long time before ordering his coffee. Something in that scene pulled at him the quiet resilience of a woman who refused to quit. The innocence of boys who still believed in second chances. He left a $100 tip under his mug that day. When he came back a week later, Lena smiled and said, "You didn't have to do that." Jack had smiled back. "I know. I wanted to." Within months, he was fixing her porch, helping with bills, driving the boys to baseball practice. Within a year, they were married in a small courthouse ceremony, no guests, no rings, just two people trying to rebuild something out of what life had broken. For a while, it felt like it worked. Lena's laughter filled the halls again. The boys brought noise back into his quiet home. Jack believed he'd found purpose, not romance. Maybe. But redemption. But even the strongest beams rot when the wrong kind of water seeps in. Lena began to change slowly, subtly. What once looked like gratitude started to look like expectation. Her compliments became complaints. Her warmth cooled into something transactional. Jack paid the bills, fixed the cars, and built the life she wanted. But every thank you disappeared like smoke. One night, while sanding a cabinet in the garage, Jack noticed a crack forming in the wood, a tiny line that didn't belong. He pressed his thumb against it, and it widened slightly. He stood there staring at it for a long time, realizing what it meant. Every house, no matter how beautiful, hides a weakness. Sometimes it's the foundation. Sometimes it's the people inside. And now, as he thought back to that dinner table and Lena's words, "You're not their father," he understood. The crack had always been there, hidden beneath the floorboards of his hope. He just hadn't wanted to see it. Jack Turner used to believe that discipline was an act of love. He'd learned it young. The Marines taught him that structure wasn't control. It was care. It was how you kept men alive. How you built something that lasted, but inside his own house. That lesson was starting to rot. Luke and Thank You had changed. The boys who once followed him around the garage, asking about tools and wood grains, now rolled their eyes when he spoke. They'd come home late, slam doors, mutter curses under their breath. One afternoon, he caught Luke skipping school, his backpack stuffed with video games instead of textbooks. When Jack tried to talk, Luke laughed that same cold, careless laugh that had once come from his mother. "You can't tell me what to do," the boy said. "You're not my dad." It was the second time those words had hit him in less than a week, and they landed just as hard. He didn't yell. Jack never yelled. He just looked at the kid at the smirk that reminded him of the man who'd walked out on Lena years ago and felt something in his chest tighten. That night, he brought it up at dinner, his tone calm but firm. "Luke's been skipping school," he said, "and Thank You got caught lying to his teacher. This can't keep happening." Lena didn't even look up from her phone. "They're kids. Jack, stop acting like you're still in the Marines. Not every problem needs a drill sergeant." He stared at her, waiting for her to meet his eyes. But she didn't. The sound of her nails tapping against the screen filled the room. "They need boundaries, Lena," he said. "Rules. Respect." She cut him off with a sigh. What they need is a father who doesn't bark orders every 5 minutes. Then, with a smirk, but I guess we both know they don't have that. The words hung there, heavier than the air itself. Luke and Thank You exchanged a glance that silent permission kids give each other when they realize their parent won't back the other up. And in that moment, the last piece of Jack's authority crumbled. He looked around the table, the fancy chandelier he'd installed, the polished oak furniture he'd built, the mortgage he paid every month, and realized something brutal. He wasn't running a family. He was financing a rebellion, private school tuition, new phones, shoes that cost more than his entire uniform allowance back in the Corps. He was feeding mouths that mocked him and buying loyalty that never came. After dinner, he sat alone in the garage. The smell of sawdust calmed him, as it always had. The rhythmic hum of the sander drowned out the noise of the house, Lena's laughter on the phone, the boys yelling at video games, the muffled music of a home that no longer felt like his. He ran his hand across a plank of maple wood, smooth and perfect, and whispered, under his breath, "You can't fix a house that refuses to hold a frame." He thought about that sentence for a long time, because a family like a structure only stands when each part carries its weight. And right now, he was the only beam keeping the whole thing from collapsing. He could feel it coming, the shift, the eventual fall. The signs were all there. The disrespect, the mockery, the silence that follows when love turns into convenience. But Jack Turner wasn't a man who acted out of rage. He was a builder, a planner. And deep down, something inside him had already started measuring where the cracks were and how to take them apart, one by one. There's a kind of silence that only comes before a storm, not the loud kind, not the violent kind, but the stillness that settles when a man finally stops hoping things will change. That night, Jack Turner reached that silence. Dinner had been another battlefield. Lena rolled her eyes when he spoke. The boys muttered under their breath. And the moment he mentioned accountability, she snapped, "You don't own this family, Jack. Stop pretending you do." He'd looked at her for a long time before answering. "I don't own it," he said quietly. "I built it." Then he stood up, cleared his plate, and walked away. Later that night, while the house slept Lena in her silk robe, the boys snoring behind closed doors, Jack sat alone at the kitchen table. The moonlight fell across the paperwork spread before him: deeds, ledgers, account passwords, insurance documents, his entire life laid out in quiet, ruthless order. To anyone else, it might have looked like a man doing late-night bookkeeping, but to Jack, it was a blueprint, and every pencil stroke, every calculation, was part of something far greater. Not destruction, born of anger, but correction born of clarity. He started with the basics, the joint checking account. He logged in, withdrew her access, and rerouted all automatic deposits into a trust one he had created years ago in his late wife's name, a charity that helped widows and children of fallen soldiers. Marianne's dream, forgotten in the chaos of his second marriage. Tonight, he revived it. Next came the credit cards. He paused for a moment, remembering the first time he'd given Lena one, the way her eyes had filled with gratitude. She'd said, "You didn't have to do that." And he'd answered, "I know. I wanted to. Now." As he clicked the close account button, his words echoed back like a cruel joke. He worked with surgical calm, no rush, no emotion. A soldier doesn't fight angry. He fights prepared. Jack Turner had lived by that creed his whole life. By midnight, the structure was taking shape, not of a house, but of a reckoning. He printed new account statements, sealed them in a folder marked Turner Foundation. He transferred ownership of the trucks and equipment from Turner Homeworks LLC to his personal holding company. Piece by piece, he pulled his name, his power out of the house that had mocked him. When he was done, he sat back and looked at the clean, empty columns of his ledger. For the first time in years, they balanced perfectly. He glanced up toward the staircase, toward the rooms where his so-called family slept. For a moment, he felt the faint tug of regret. But it passed quickly. Regret was for men who doubted themselves. Jack no longer did. He opened the old leather journal that once belonged to Marianne. Inside the front cover was her handwriting: "Build with patience. Love with purpose." He traced the words with his thumb and whispered, "I'm still building. Mari." just not the way we planned. Outside, a soft wind brushed against the windows, rattling them just enough to sound like breathing. He closed the folder, stood, and turned off the light. From that night forward, he stopped being the husband who fixed everything that broke. He became the architect of consequence, careful, deliberate, unstoppable. And while the woman upstairs slept in comfort, believing she'd won the last argument, Jack Turner was already sketching the next chapter of her life, a blueprint of loss, discipline, and justice measured down to the inch. Because in a builder's world, when the frame rots, you don't cry over the wood, you mark your lines, sharpen your saw, and you start to cut. The downfall didn't start with shouting. It started with a decline. Lena Turner stood at the counter of an upscale boutique in downtown Chicago, her arms full of shopping bags, silk dresses, heels. A few things for the boys. She swiped the card, flashed her perfect smile, and waited. The cashier frowned. "Ma'am, it says declined." Lena blinked. "That's impossible." "Try it again." Another swipe. Another rejection. The screen glared red. The customers behind her began to whisper. She could feel their eyes on her back, the humiliation crawling up her neck. She pulled out her backup card, the one Jack had given her for emergencies. Declined again. The sound of silence in that moment was louder than any explosion. Lena forced a laugh, gathered her purse, and walked out fast, pretending not to care, but her heart was hammering. By the time she reached her car, the smile was gone. Her hands shook as she dialed Jack's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice steady as ever. "Jack, what the hell is going on? My cards don't work." He didn't hesitate. "Choices have weight." "Lena," she blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" But he'd already hung up. That was all he said. 3 words, cold, surgical, final. At that exact moment, across town, Jack stood in his workshop, sanding a piece of cedar. Slow and steady. The sound of the sandpaper brushing against the wood was rhythmic calm. Precise. Every stroke stripped away another layer, revealing clean grain beneath. A builder's ritual. And now, his meditation. The phone vibrated again. Another call. Another plea. But he didn't answer. He didn't need to. The plan was already unfolding. One quiet consequence at a time. By noon, the ripples began to spread. Lena's phone buzzed again this time. From the boys' school. "Mrs. Turner. This is Principal Daniels. We've had a serious incident involving Luke and thank you." Her heart dropped. "What kind of incident?" "A fight," the voice said, "with another student. And this isn't the first time. We'll need to review their behavior, and Mrs. Turner, since Mr. Turner sponsors their tuition, we'll also need to confirm ongoing funding." Lena's mouth went dry. She promised to call back, hung up, and stared at the steering wheel. Her sons were out of control. The school was hinting at expulsion, and her financial safety net had just been cut clean. She tried the bank next, but the automated voice was merciless. "This account has been frozen by the primary holder." She slammed the phone shut and screamed, the sound bouncing off the car windows. Meanwhile, Jack kept working, measuring, cutting, sanding. He didn't need to see the chaos. He could feel it, like tremors through the ground. Each one proof that the foundation he'd built for her was collapsing exactly as designed. The beauty of precision revenge is that it doesn't look like revenge at all. It looks like peace. Jack didn't yell, didn't gloat, didn't even raise his tone. He simply let cause meet effect. While Lena scrambled between banks and phone calls, Jack planed another piece of wood, thin curls falling to the floor like shavings of the past. He paused only once, looking at the clean, smooth surface he'd made, and whispered, "That's better." In one day, the structure of her comfort had turned to dust. The woman who once sneered, "You're not their father," was now realizing what that meant. Because fathers provide, and when you push one away, you lose the shelter he built around you. That night, as Jack locked up his workshop, the city hummed in the distance. He felt no anger, no triumph, just the quiet satisfaction of balance restored. The ledger had evened. Justice, finally, was in the hands of the builder. When Lena came home that evening, she didn't bother pretending. The front door slammed so hard the picture frames rattled. Her voice came sharp, trembling with panic and rage. "Jack, my cards are dead. The bank says the accounts are frozen. The school called about the boys. What did you do?" But Jack Turner didn't answer right away. He was standing at the kitchen counter, drying a single glass. His movements calm and deliberate, the kind of calm that comes when a man has already made peace with his decision. When he finally turned to face her, his expression wasn't angry. It was measured. "Sit down." "Lena." She didn't. She folded her arms and hissed, "I'm not one of your soldiers." "Jack." He gave a small nod. "You're right." Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. Sliding it across the counter toward her, it landed softly. Like a gavel on a padded bench, she frowned. "Suspicious. What is this?" He didn't blink. "Proof. Divorce papers, trust filings, bank records, and a full account of every dollar you spent that wasn't yours to spend." Lena's eyes widened. "You went through my finances." "No," Jack said. "I went through our finances. The difference is I earned mine." She flipped through the papers, her breathing quickening. "You can't do this. You can't just decide to throw us out." Jack rested his hands on the counter, his voice steady as stone. "You said I wasn't their father." He paused long enough for her to meet his gaze. I finally listened. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through steel. Her jaw trembled. "I was angry. I didn't mean it." Jack exhaled slowly. "You did. And the truth is, you meant it long before you said it. You used me to fix what another man broke. I just didn't want to see it." From the hallway, small footsteps approached Luke and Thank You. Their faces were pale, eyes darting between their mother and Jack. "Dad?" "What's going on?" Thank You asked quietly. Jack froze at the word, "Dad," for a fraction of a second. It cracked something in him, but he steadied his voice. "You'll stay with your mother," he said. "Like she wanted." Luke's eyes filled with tears. "But you can't just leave." Jack shook his head. "A man learns accountability from the example he follows. I can't teach that here anymore." The boys didn't understand. Not really, but they felt it. The finality. Thank You began to cry softly, burying his face against his brother's shoulder. Lena's anger collapsed into desperation. "Jack, please. I said things I didn't mean. We can fix this," he interrupted gently, but firmly. "You can't rebuild a house that refuses to stand straight. You keep patching the same walls, pretending it's home. But I see the rot now." He picked up his keys, tucking the folded papers back into her hands. Her voice broke. "Where will we go? I don't have the money." "Jack, you're ruining us." He turned toward the doorway, pausing just once. "I didn't ruin you," he said quietly. "You did that the moment you taught your boys that disrespect is love." For a moment, she just stood there, tears streaking her face, the papers trembling in her hands. Behind her, the boys clung together, wide-eyed and silent. Jack opened the door, and a soft breeze drifted through the kitchen, stirring the loose pages across the counter. He didn't slam it. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stepped out, closing it gently behind him. The click was soft, almost tender, but to Lena, it sounded like a lock sliding into place, the sound of a boundary restored, and a man finally free. 6 months passed. The seasons turned. And so did Jack Turner's life. He'd sold the big house in the suburbs, the one that once echoed with laughter and later with contempt. Now, he lived in a quiet coastal town 2 hours south, where the air smelled of salt and cedar, and the mornings began with the sound of gulls instead of arguments. He bought a small warehouse near the harbor. Nothing fancy, concrete floors, wide windows, and space enough for a few saws and workbenches. He hung a sign above the door that simply read, "Turner Woodworks." At first, he worked alone, building tables and chairs for the local market. But word spread quickly, not about the furniture, but about him. A Marine veteran who worked with his hands and never raised his voice. A man who didn't talk much but always listened. Soon, other veterans began to show up. Then a few teenage boys from the community center, kids who had no fathers, no guidance, no anchor. One of them was Eli, a small 13-year-old with restless hands and the kind of silence Jack recognized. The boy had been bounced from one foster home to another. He barely spoke, but he was always watching, watching how Jack measured, how he cut, how he never rushed. Jack saw himself in that quiet observation, the same hunger for direction, for belonging. One afternoon, he handed the boy a block of pine and said, "Cut it straight." Eli nodded, concentrating, tongue caught between his teeth as he guided the saw. The line came out crooked, but his determination didn't falter. Jack smiled, steadying the wood. "Try again." From then on, Eli never missed a day. A few weeks later, a woman stopped by the workshop. Maya, the social worker who ran the town's youth programs. She had kind eyes and the kind of calm presence that made noise fade away. "I've been hearing about your place," she said. "You're doing more good than half the therapy sessions I run." Jack chuckled softly. Wood doesn't talk back. Maybe that's the secret. But over time, she became a regular visitor, checking on the boys, bringing coffee, sometimes staying to watch them work. He liked the way she listened without needing to fill the silence. She didn't pry into his past, and he didn't offer it. They just built quietly, side by side. Then one day, while sanding a tabletop, Eli blurted out something that stopped Jack in his tracks. "Hey, Dad, can you show me how to fix this corner?" The word hung there, "Dad." Neither of them moved for a moment. Eli froze, realizing what he'd said, his face flushing red. Sorry, Mr. Turner. I didn't mean to." Jack placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's all right, son," he said quietly. "You can call me that if you want." Eli's shoulders relaxed. He nodded once, then went back to sanding. And in that small moment, that unplanned, unspoken connection, something inside Jack healed that no revenge ever could. That night, he locked up the shop and stood outside watching the sun set over the water. The light hit the ocean like molten gold, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel the weight of loss pressing on his chest. He felt something better: purpose. Peace hadn't come from tearing things down. It had come from building again, this time not out of duty or guilt, but out of choice. Jack Turner had spent a lifetime constructing homes for others. Now, at last, he was building one inside himself. 6 months later, the storm had passed, but not for everyone. Lena Turner now lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat on the edge of the city. The shine was gone. No more boutiques, no more dinners out, no more easy money. She worked long shifts at a grocery store, counting change to buy groceries for her boys, who were no longer boys at all, but angry young men trying to find someone else to blame. Luke had been suspended twice. Thank you barely went to class. Their defiance no longer looked like confidence, it looked like confusion. Without structure, without example, their world had no frame to hold it together. And late at night, when the noise of the city went quiet, Lena would sometimes drive past the place she swore she'd never see again, the coast, where Jack had made a new life. From her car window, she could see the glow of a small workshop near the harbor, warm light spilling through the glass, laughter echoing faintly through the wind. Inside, Jack was sweeping sawdust from the floor, and beside him was a young boy, maybe 13, carefully stacking wood under his guidance. She watched the way the boy smiled up at him, the way Jack bent slightly to show him something, patient and calm the way a father would. For a moment, her chest tightened with something between jealousy and sorrow. She wanted to drive closer, to say something, but what could she possibly say? So she sat there in the dark, the hum of her engine fading, watching what she had thrown away. And when the lights finally went out, she turned the key and drove off, headlights cutting through the fog. Jack never saw her car. He was too busy locking the door, too busy living again. As the narrator's voice returns, calm and sure, revenge ends when the rebuild begins. I stopped trying to fix the ungrateful and started teaching the willing. Some people are lessons, others are foundations. The difference is knowing when to stop building. He looks toward the camera, voice steady with quiet pride. Brothers, if you were me, would you have fought to keep her, or walked away to rebuild in peace? Tell me your thoughts below. And don't forget, dignity is the foundation no one can take from you. Like, share, and subscribe, because every story here reminds us, peace is built, not found.